travelling power with ixm.co.uk, where cars go faster.
In this week's show, we find out how one January sale brought the stars out to play. We get a first drive of a luxury car that can see in the dark. And we go back to the future with a born-again bike.
How do you fancy some state-of-the-art technology used by the American military in Operation Desert Storm? Millions of Pentagon dollars and the finest scientific minds went into its development. This high-tech system was originally designed to identify people and kill them. It's technology that's now available to civilians. In fact, it might be fitted to your next new car. Now, fitted to this 2001 Cadillac DeVille is this, a Desert Storm style infrared camera. This is probably the only Cadillac DeVille in Britain, and we're going to go for it. Wow, look at that. It's like a Christmas tree when you fire this thing up. Woof, that's a little bit overpowering. So many buttons and bells and switches and whistles and you name it, it's here. Whatever happened to the days when there used to be a car radio? Now we've got a gramophone installed in the dashboard here. But you know, the most significant thing about this car is this is a night vision car, but I can't find a switch to activate it. In fact, the switch is right down under here, where you'd normally expect to find the lever for the boot, and it's not illuminated. At the very time when you need it, at night, you can't find it if you're not familiar with the car, because it's not lit up. Let's take it for a spin and see if this night vision lark works.
I was under the influence.
Wow, I've finally found a way to activate the night vision screen, and it's there before me. How do you actually get the image on the screen down there? Well, it's quite simple, really. You've got that infrared camera in the grille, as we said before. That picks up an image which is then projected back onto the bottom of the windscreen here. It's a head-up display system. It's similar to the sort of technology that fighter pilots use, where they've got the information they need at sort of eye level. I'm very confused at the moment because I'm getting a very crystal clear image of a taxi in front of me, and I'm getting a very blurred sort of taxi in my night vision screen, and quite frankly, it's confusing me. Admittedly, I'm driving in a city centre where there's all kind of things going on. Maybe if I was out in the wilderness somewhere, it would really come into its own, because it would pick up that deer that stepped into the road, or that pedestrian, or that cyclist. Well, clearly it's about as much use here, this system, as a chocolate teapot. So what we're going to do is go to a quiet and dark part of London, and we're going to see if we can get this thing up and running in more typical and more useful circumstances. Well, we've come out to the wilderness, and we're in a pitch black street, and I was very sceptical about the whole thing. In the West End, bright lights doesn't work. Out here, in the darkness, it's an entirely different story. Because up there is our researcher who's walking backwards and forwards across the road. I can't see him, even with the main beam on. I cannot pick him up at all. And yet, with our night vision screen, I'm seeing him, well, not quite as clear as day, but I can certainly see there's a moving human being up there. I can see that he's an adult. I could see if it was a child. I could see if it was a dog. It's absolutely amazing. This is a potentially life-saving device in these very, very dark, remote circumstances. The night vision system is only available in the US at present, but GM say it might make its way to the UK within the next 2 or 3 years. If it does come here, it's likely to cost around £2,000. Ironically, the thermal technology night vision system that was designed to kill people on the battlefield might just end up saving lives on the road.
You notice, like, we've all been there. You've been driving for a couple of hours and you're suddenly aware that you feel sleepy. Your eyes are heavy, lights are glaring and you're losing your concentration, but you're just determined to carry on with the journey and get home.
But trying to fight sleep can have tragic consequences. Tina Mullen-Collins' partner of 8.5 years, Tim, was killed instantly along with his 13-year-old passenger. Tina's brother James, who was also in the car, was seriously injured. It's believed the driver of the other car fell asleep at the wheel.
The last thing I remember is turning to look at Craig sat behind Tim, and then I woke up in hospital and I've been told that we were travelling along the A29 and a Range Rover travelling towards us came onto our side of the road and hit us head on, killed Tim instantly, and Craig died in hospital the following day, and I was left with serious injuries to my spine and shoulders and chest.
Apparently the Range Rover driver said to the paramedics and to the fire crew that were trying to cut him out that he hoped he hadn't killed anyone, that he was tired, he hadn't slept in 24 hours. He was tired, it wasn't his fault.
The obvious solution is not to drive when you're feeling tired, but many of us do, and we use all sorts of devices to keep going, as we found out when we asked motorists at a busy West Country service station.
I do what I've just done now, which is I have something to drink usually. Just a 5-10 minute break usually makes all the difference before you actually go back on again.
I pull into the services, obviously, drink coffee.
Make sure the music's on, chewing gum. Just open the window and keep driving.
Open the window and do a lot of praying as well.
In fact, none of those work. Let's start with a cup of coffee. How much caffeine's in it? That's a problem you simply don't know. Research at Loughborough University reveals that the amount of caffeine in a cup of coffee can vary from day to day, depending on who's making it. You may even end up with decaffeinated. Another misconception is that most accidents happen late at night. But tests on volunteers at the Sleep Research Laboratory revealed that wasn't always the case.
Another surge is in the middle of the afternoon. We have a dip, a natural dip then, and many people experience this. We all feel a bit sleepy in the middle of the afternoon, and indeed that's when we have a surge of these sort of accidents. And again, it tends to be men, and not only young men in the middle of the afternoon, but older men as well.
So what should you do? Well, if you suddenly feel sleepy halfway through a journey, go for a high-energy drink, which will contain a controlled amount of caffeine. So the sequence is this: you feel tired, you have to pull over and have a sleep. But before you do that, you have your high-energy drink. That means your body has 20 minutes to sleep and 20 minutes for the caffeine to start kicking in and start to work. But this is just a short-term solution. This is not a way to replace sleep. In fact, the only way to do it is to go home and really get some serious Zs in.
Sotheby's auction house in London is used to seeing the stars turn out for auctions of rare works of art. So what brought this particular group of A-list names out on a cold winter's night? Well, it was scooters, of course. Not just any old ones, mind you, but a collection of amazing machines customised by the rich and famous for charity. David Bailey, Donna Eyre and Helen Fielding were just some of the names behind the frames at the auction, but the star of the show was undoubtedly this eye-catching creation by Notting Hill star Rhys Evans.
I like scooters, you know, so to be asked to design one was quite an honour. I just had this crazy picture in my head one night of an Italian priest weaving through the crowds in the Vatican So this is sort of a homage really to Vespa's Italian ancestry.
So, who bought the creation? Well, none other than Reese's pal, Harry Enfield, who likes a good joke. But Harry's already a convert to the joys of scootering and has a machine tucked away for regular use.
Getting around town, having somewhere to park, and they're fantastic. In fact, my wife got me it as a Valentine's present. Here's pulling power. She pulled me with that one. And it's the best present I've ever had.
And even Harry's fictional characters are being known to take to 2 wheels.
Tim, nice for Tim. I think he's got a scooter, but he falls off a lot because when he gets the lights, he doesn't put his feet on the ground. Straight over.
Here's an amazing fact. For less than the price of a full annual season ticket to London's crumbling public transport system, you can buy yourself fun and freedom with a scooter. No wonder sales are booming.
You could say that this is the third age of the scooter. The revolution started in the 1950s.
But it was actually a factory in the West Country that produced the scooters that took the UK by storm. It's exactly 50 years since Douglas Motorcycles began churning out Vespas under licence. And the same year, this shop on London's Edgware Road began selling them. Richard Agius founded the shop, and now his son and granddaughter continue the tradition.
The motorcycle industry laughed at them in the beginning, but when they started to sell, they thought twice about laughing.
But something else was happening to drive sales. Scooters were becoming hip. The early 60s saw the birth of a whole new look. Welcome to the world of the mod.
I was a mod in 1960. It was fun to have a scooter, fun to be with a group that we had no problems with.
Hey, and guess what? The mods are back. Meet the Untouchables.
Why do you think people are so obsessed with this, the whole look in scooters?
It's a classic look. It's something that's typically British, and it's easy to do. Like, it's easier to do this than to put spikes in your barnet and have it all green.
We got our own personal scooters that we loved and adorned with whatever accessories that we wanted to adorn them. Mirrors, spotlights. We are proud of our scooters and proud of our wear. Don't forget, we were the mods that brought fashion into Carnaby Street, into England.
These days, if you want to look seriously cool on a scooter, you've got to have the right gear. And the beauty about shops like this one in Waterloo is that you don't have to have loads of cash to look hip. So if I wanted to get an outfit, look cool on the scooter and everything, look the biz, what would I go for?
Well, you've got a nice brightly coloured mini dress, little space age number.
I think that's more me.
Yeah.
Do you think? But I mean, would you really go on a scooter with a little mini dress on? Was it not a bit difficult?
Well, I think you could just about get away with going on a little cruise up and down the seafront on a rally.
Now, you've done all these bikes up beautifully. It must be quite expensive.
It all depends on what you want out of it, really, what sort of paint scheme or accessories that you put on it. If you're going to send it to a place to be restored, it can go up to like £2,000 or more, which is what the investment you've got to put in the scooter in the first place. But they're worth more than most cars, I'd say.
Paul, you're never a show-off, are you?
No.
Do you sleep with your bike?
Yes, I do, Gal. That's why I'm all oily.
OK, thanks. See you.
Today, scootering has come full circle, and once again they're being sold as a cheap and practical way of getting around. Sales are booming as people realise the benefits of swapping a boring bus queue for a machine that gives you more smiles per mile than any other form of transport. Shops like Metropolis in the Square Mile have even been persuading city gents to swap their BMs.
Well, these guys have actually done it. They got rid of the cars and they got scooters. Why?
Why not? Why, when you see queues of Ferraris, Porsches, everything else...
Where are you hanging out?
Going down embankment. Sadly, not mine, it has to be said.
Yeah,
and all these vast thousands of pounds, and you're on a scooter tricking past at thousands of the cost. I mean, why not?
Well, at the end of the day, when you're tired and you finish work and you want to get home, is it ever a problem thinking, oh, I've got to get the bike and get my helmet on?
Never. It's almost an excitement
Yeah,
going
it's the best moment.
Yeah.
Is it?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, you can imagine, if you're sitting in the office, it's 6 o'clock in the evening, you're tired, you've had a long day, oh my God, I've got to sit on the tube for 40 minutes. That's if there is a tube. Whereas for me, I walk out the door, get on my moped, thank you very much, first man home.
And isn't it amazing that after all these years, the scooter is set to become the transport of the future?
Well, we've met some born-again mods, but after the break, James Allen gets to play the born-again rocker. We ride the new Bonnie, and we check out the bug jam in Surfer's Paradise.
Do you remember when fish and chips used to come wrapped in newspaper? When you could buy a new Mini for 400 quid? And when Britain had a rail network that actually worked? You do? In that case, you'll remember the Triumph Bonneville. The original Bonnie was launched at London's Earl's Court Bike Show in the winter of '59 and soon became the ultimate status symbol for a whole generation of hooligans.
With a fine weekend, a powerful motorbike and a girlfriend on the back, the ton-up boys set off. 2 short days for riding high and fast, to wind and weave, and often to be a menace.
In an era when there was no speed limit on the open road and helmets were optional, it promised an unbelievable top speed of 120 miles an hour. Of course, the original Bonneville would never hit 120, but it was close enough. Rockers and cafe racers across the country adored it, and so did the Americans. The original teenage tearaway James Dean owned a Bonneville. Richard Gere rode one and broke hearts around the world in An Officer and a Gentleman. Clint Eastwood broke heads on his in Coogan's Bluff. And Evel Knievel broke bones, mostly his own, when he used a souped-up Bonnie for his infamous jump at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas. Those were the days. Now, the Bonneville's been off the market for almost 20 years, but such is the confidence at Triumph these days, they've decided to revive their best-loved model.
I am your main man if you're looking for trouble. I take no lip, no one's tougher than me. I kick your face, you'd soon be seeing double. Hey, little girl, keep your head top of me. I'm a rocker.
Quirky, with bags of character, a great bottom end, and a little bit rough around the edges. But enough about me, let's talk about the new Triumph Bonneville. Well, I'm sorry to say appearances are slightly deceptive. It looks the business, but it rides a little bit awkwardly. It's got a 19-inch front wheel. What does that mean? Well, it means it's a little bit unstable. You never really feel as though the front wheel is underneath you through the corners, and that is very, very disconcerting. On the plus side, it's got a belting engine. Really, really nice engine. Terrific gear shift, and the low speed control is magnificent. One small regret I have is the exhaust note. The old Bonnie used to be a real rorty thumper, and you get the feeling that rortiness is still there in this engine, but it's been totally squeezed and suppressed by these very politically correct exhaust pipes. It's a real shame. I want to really hear this Bonnie, and at the moment all I hear is a whirring sewing machine. So what's the point of a bike that looks 40 years old? Well, the concept may be new to Triumph, but it's something Harley-Davidson have been doing very effectively for many years. It's called heritage. Now, it's not real heritage, of course. Nobody wants dodgy old drum brakes, an engine that spews out oil and Duff Electrics. No, this is like the Middle Ages without the smell. It's Robin Hood with an American accent. It's Disneyland heritage, where everything is bright and clean and works properly. OK, so it's more Arthur Fonzarelli than Marlon Brando. But after a day spent blasting around the back roads of Derbyshire, I've really grown to like it. Running along here now at about 40 miles an hour with the wind in my hair, the sun on my back, it's an absolute dream of a bike. This is what it's for, and this is why it'll sell shed loads in America. The original Bonneville was bought by people who wanted to scare old ladies, but this thing is such a doddle to ride, I'm thinking of buying one for my granny. It may not be the full-on retro experience, but in my view, it's Fonz-tastic.
Try looking at the Volkswagen this way. A sealed steel bottom that leaves little exposed to the elements.
Commercials may have moved on since this one from the 1960s, but one thing certainly hasn't changed. The VW Beetle is still one of the nation's best loved cars. Whether you've invested in a new one or your pride and joy is getting on in years, the Beetle's popularity has never gone out of fashion. Each year, thousands of people flock to the West Country to join the Cornwall VW Jamboree. The county is busting at the seams with bugs of all shapes and sizes. Some are plain and some are just plain ridiculous.
I'm Chris, and this is my 1969 Carman Cabriolet Beetle.
And, like most VW owners, Chris has given her a special name.
The car, because of her colour, is called Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary is a well-travelled Beetle, and she's won Chris 29 trophies in the last 10 years.
It feels very different from a modern car when you're driving. It hasn't got power steering, it hasn't got the modern suspension, it hasn't got the quite stunning acceleration that some cars have got. The ride is quite basic, but after all it was designed in the 1930s and it still has that basic design. So you're driving a car which is, by design, nearly 65 years old. I think I am a car rat. You have to become very interested in it and to become almost obsessed by it. It certainly is the car of the century, and that's been voted by over 22 million people, not by a few judges in a contest for car enthusiasts.
My name's Paul. This is my 1966 VW panel van and I've had it 5 years. I like old vehicles, so they've got a lot more character and it's got free tax. In 5 years, I've made £2.5 grand. I love the van because you can bring it to the VW shows and also you can use it for surfing. It's quite practical. I spend most of my time messing around with this vehicle, and also I've got a Beetle as well. I always wanted a panel van. I didn't want a camper, but panel vans are very hard to come by now because they were used as a commercial vehicle. I had to go all the way up to Scotland to look at one, and that was absolutely rubbish. And then I ended up buying this one from Bournemouth. I bought it more or less as soon as I saw it, and it's more or less as it is now. But apart from me just tidying it up, this is its first run out, and everything's going well. Touch wood.
Well, it's not a T-Bird, but it's still fun, 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 isn't it, girls? That's it for this week, but in the next Pulling Power, we've got all the hot news from America's sexiest car show, including a first look at some of the cars that'll be hitting the streets here over the next 12 months.
And Pulling Power is back at the same time, 10:30 next Tuesday. Next tonight, the ITV Nightly News.
Pulling Power with ixm.co.uk, where cars go faster.